In this second presentation taken from the Cape Clear training course, you will learn the basic concepts behind web services. In the first presentation, we created the XML document shown here and an XML schema description of it. We now need to start passing it around. We need to send it as a message. When we send this document, the messaging bus automatically wraps it in an envelope. We call this the SOAP envelope. The XML document is placed in the SOAP body. The purpose of this is simply to provide a place for the messaging layer to add information to the message. We call this the SOAP header. This might be routing information, for example contained in a WS addressing header, or it might be a digital signature in a WS security header. We have our XML document, which is described by XML schema. Now that our document is in a message, it would be good to have a way of describing that. To do this, we use Web Services Description Language, or WSDL for short. A WSDL document also uses the XML syntax. Each message is defined by referring to the XML schema that describes the document it contains. WSDL defines namespaces in just the same way as XML schema, and it provides a location to put your XML schema inside the WSDL. Messages can be grouped together. Here we see an input and an output message used to create a request-response operation. We could also define messages to describe the faults that might occur and add them to the operation. Operations can be grouped together to form interfaces or port types, to use the WSDL terminology. This gives you everything you need to describe a set of messages you can send to a web service and the responses you can expect to get back. However, there are a few more practical details that need to be described. WSDL files can import definitions from other WSDL files simply by stating the location and the namespace of the definitions that you expect to find there. The binding provides additional information used by the message layer to format the messages. In the past, a number of different representations have been used. However, the industry has now agreed that two kinds of bindings are sufficient. These are known as the RPC literal and document literal bindings. The term literal means that the message will be formatted exactly as you have described in your XML schema. Document literal bindings are used for message passing, where the message contains a single document defined by referring to an element described in the XML schema. This is best practice, and it is the most commonly used binding. We use RPC literal bindings in some of our sample applications, as they allow message parts to be simple types such as strings. However, as I said, best practice is always to use document literal bindings. In many ways the details are unimportant, as the binding can be generated automatically from the port type we defined on the previous slide. The address to which your message should be sent is described as a port in the service section of the WSDL. Now our WSDL description is complete. Again, you're not expected to create WSDL files by hand. They may be generated by tools or can be created using graphical editor. Here is what our WSDL looks like in a graphical editor. On the left you see the address of the service. On the right is the interface or port type and the messages associated with the operation. The dot in the middle represents the binding. As I said, the details in it are unimportant. The editor will automatically regenerate it to keep it in sync with your port type. So, to summarize, we've seen what XML documents look like. XML documents are described by XML schema. XML documents are passed around inside SOAP messages, and these SOAP messages are described by WSDL. And this WSDL, of course, references the XML schema. I do hope you've enjoyed this brief introduction to web services. If you need to learn more, visit capeclear.com or perhaps attend one of our training courses.